Alright, now the next part I'm going to work on is these drop boxes here. Before I sandblast this, there's a few pieces I need to get out. We got the seal here, and then there's this plate here. We have a bearing race inside there and a bearing race up here. So I need to remove all of these, or these three pieces, to get those races out. Alright, so for starters, I'm going to go ahead and take out the easy brace, which is the one up here. So I'm just going to spin it around, and I'm going to use a long punch and a hammer to drive it out. You can get a little lip right in there to hit and knock it out. And that race is a 25523, and it stinks like old burnt gear oil. There is an O-ring right here. It is a square O-ring. This O-ring from New Holland is about $50, which is ridiculous. I actually found just a regular O-ring to put back. And I can't remember what the dash number is off the top of my head, but when I go to put it back on the tractor, I'll be sure to give you that number. So the race that's down here is going to come out this way. However, right now we have no way of getting behind it. So I'm going to knock our seal out first, and then that seal retainer. Then I'll be able to get behind that race. If I remember correctly, it's been a while since I did the other side. It may be the seal, then the race, and then the retainer. So first step is knocking the seal out. Let's try this approach. And a little bit bigger hammer. There's the seal out finally. Alright, so now that I got that seal out, I can get in here on this race and knock it free. Okay, there's that race. I don't even see a number on it. I'll have to put that at the bottom of the video. Now I should be able to knock this piece off. Okay, now as you see, I have this coming off right here. Once I get the O-ring to clear it, it should just come right off. Okay, and now that the O-ring is cleared, it just comes right off. There's the O-ring. Now these O-rings that go on these guys, there's 3 per side. They're about $7 each from New Holland, so that's kind of not too bad. I mean, yeah, you can find them cheaper elsewhere, but at least that guarantees you no leak. The O-ring that goes up here on the back, you're probably not going to have to worry too much up here, because your axle seal is containing all your rear end fluid. This O-ring basically just keeps the fluid in this guy. And there's not a whole lot in there. Maybe quart and a half, maybe 2 quarts at the most. So it probably ain't going to really see a whole lot of pressure up there. So to me, it's not worth the $50 for a seal to go up there to prevent that. Especially if I can do the same job with just a regular O-ring. Okay, so now that I have this piece off, I now have to just pull this O-ring and then slide it back on and get this piece put on, the rear cover and our pan, and then this box will be ready for sandblasting and painting. And once I sandblast this, I will come in here and kind of clean this thing up some. This particular side was the left side of the tractor, and it had hardly any oil in it, and what was in it looked like mud. So that's all caked all throughout here. I'm gonna have to get all that cleaned up. Which, like I said, I'll do that after I sandblast it, because there's gonna be some sand residue in there anyway. But sandblast is now the next step for these things. Okay, so now that we got all of our pieces for our drop boxes painted, we've got our glip tall put on it as well. It's now time to put the bearing races in here and start assembling the box to check our preloads. So, for our race that goes right here, it's a 28920. When we installed this one, it's going to drop down into a lip, so we're going to have to use the old race to push it in. And then we'll just press that in. Okay. Now, that pop was it actually straightening up. It's actually not fully seated down here yet. So I have this other race that's too small to contact this one. So I have to put that one in there and then use this to step it up.
Whenever I press this in now, though, this other race is going to get locked. But I just take a hammer and just tap it back out, and it's perfectly fine. Because this needs to go in about another 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch. Okay. So like I say, this is now locked in, but I can just tap that with a hammer and it'll come out. Now, the O-ring that goes here, we're not going to put on. Actually, on this particular piece, we can put this one on. But on the other ones, we're not going to put those on until we set our preload. This piece in particular, which this is where our brake backing plate will bolt to, this piece is going to be installed onto the drop box and it's not coming back off. So we can go ahead and put that O-ring on. On this one and this one, we're going to wait on the O-ring. So on this plate, which is on the axle outer on top of the drop box, we're going to use a bearing race 2735X. I got this block of wood in here just because this paint's still kind of soft. It's been a couple of days since I painted it, but it's still soft paint. There's that race installed. Now this one here, since this is curved, I suggest a piece of wood. That way the wood will kind of give a little bit. Otherwise this one will rotate on you and be hard to get this race installed square. Now this race is a 25520. Okay. So there's that one installed. I don't know if the camera can see it, but I put a pretty good dent in that board right there. There. This is just some pine, so it's real soft wood. But no damage through my part. Okay, so there's the 3 races installed on our caps. We have one more race to install in the actual drop box. Okay, so the bearing that we got installed into our drop box is the one that's back here, which is what I refer to as the inner axle bearing. So that bearing race is a 25523. We're just going to set it in there and just drive it in until it's flush. We'll set it down so I can get on a little better. Okay, so that was an ordeal, but it's in there now. I had to kind of come off to the sides to help straighten this thing up to get it down in there some. And that mark in there, I don't know if you can see it or not, it's just from the install tool. But hardened steel versus aluminum, so which one wins? So that's not going to affect the bearing at all. So now it's time to set the preload on these bearings. Alright, so now to check our preload on these axle bearings. The manual wants you to clamp this in a vise. I'm not going to do that since it's fresh paint. So it's going to be a little more difficult. But I have installed the axle in here. These are the original shims. Hopefully they're still correct and I don't have to make any. We're going to set that on there onto these little studs. And then we have the plate that we just put the race in with no O-ring yet. Right there. And so we're going to go ahead and stick this up there and get it bolted down, torque to spec. And like I said, this is going to be fun without bolted down. But go ahead and get the bolt in it here. I'll get this drawn up and bolted down. Then we'll torque it and check our rotational torque. Okay, so on this preload for this upper axle, the shims that originally came off of here, I had about 57 thousandths worth of shims. Well, when I put that in there, the axle, you can't see it because it's back here, but it's basically like right here, locked up. Like I couldn't even spin it. So luckily, unlike the transmission, I had shims from the other side, so I was able to kind of cannibalize them, if you want to call it that, or just steal them, borrow them, whatever. And I was able to determine that I'm going to have another 20,000 shim in here. So I'm going to have to make at least one of these. I'm probably going to have to make two because the right side is actually 55 thousandths, so we'll probably end up having to make two of these guys. But lift this guy up. There's the axle. You can see it back here. You lift this guy up so the axle free spins, or well, not really free spins, but it's not dragging on anything. And just like our transmission, we hook our spring scale to it and we pull it. Right now I'm at about 4 thousandths. Now the spec on this for new bearings is pretty wide. It's actually like 7 pounds to 21 pounds. So I actually did this before I put it on camera just to verify everything, and I was pulling at about 14, and now all of a sudden I got 4, which is kind of weird because the only thing I did different was I went and torqued it down. Let's see. But anyway, I'm going to have to add a shim here. So this is why it's important to check this whenever you change these bearings. Because even though I used the original shims, it locked this axle up. See, now I know I got this bearing preload set right. It's not going to burn up my bearings, put excess load on the tractor, anything of that nature. As far as the one down here, Manual says to bolt this back to the tractor and then do this one. Well, due to the weight of this bearing being so heavy and having taken it on and off multiple times, I'm actually going to go ahead and just set it here on the bench, which is the next thing I'm going to do. And I'll try to video that one a little bit more since I didn't do it too much on this, because this one really fought me. So let me get this tore down and then we'll work on this one. Alright, so to do the bottom bearing, first thing we gotta do is we gotta install this seal retainer. I've already got the new race installed in it. I'm not going to put the seal in just yet. However, I am going to go ahead and put the O-ring on this one. And the new hauling number is a 9823544. It's another one of those expensive O-rings, but where it's located, you really don't want to, cheap out on it. But I'm going to put that in there in that groove. And then we're going to put a little bit of silicone lube on it to help it slide in. I'll just sit that up there and slide it in. Tap it in. Just make sure you don't pinch your O-ring. I kind of figure I probably have to draw it in with some nuts. Since I got that glip tall on there, it's a little thick. Okay, it looks like the O-ring went in. So now I just have to pull this down evenly. So I still don't have this flush, which if I had the brake plate on here and put the nuts and the washers on there, it should bottom out. Since I don't have the brake clean just yet, I just didn't put it on there. So I'm gonna have to get something on here to help seat this. Either cut me down some washers to fit here or something. Might be able to tap it with a hammer, I don't know. But I'll figure out something. Okay, so to get this fully seated, I just went and found some 5/8 nuts. Stuck on there and used some more nuts to seat it all the way down. And I went ahead and torqued these down to 100 foot-pounds, which specs like 150. But that's kind of hard to do on a bench. So 100's good for now. So now it's time to start loading in our stub axle so we can check our preload on these lower bearings. And like I say, the seal is not in here yet. So we're going to take our axle. We're going to take our outer bearing, which is a 28985. Slide it onto the shaft. Then we're going to take this big spacer. Slide it on there.
And then we're going to take our big bull gear. And this is going to be fun. And we're going to slide it in and get it splined. So now, big washer. Bearing, inner bearings to 5580. That'll slide on. Then we got little washer and then our nut. And for this step, this nut just has to be snug. Okay, so now, yeah, gears in there, everything's spinning. So now I got to put the cap on the back along with our shims to check our preload. So we got our cap with our race, no O-ring. I'm going to go ahead and torque these down. So I'm only going to do about 45. I think the spec's like 60, but I'm going to do 45. And then we'll pull it and see what we read. Which, from what I can tell so far, I believe this one's going to be in spec or close enough to it. Okay, so I'm going to take this box, which is now extremely heavy. I'm just going to let it down on the side. Now you see that turns pretty good. Well, the spec on this is 2 to 5 pounds pull. I believe I got that. Let's see if my gauge will even register. We're going to wrap it around the studs. And we'll pull it. Oh, the string's hitting the stud. I was wondering why I wasn't easily spinning right now. Okay. So, yeah, I don't even register on my gauge. So it's probably extremely loose. But I'm going to leave it at that. because there's no end play. So this box here, I'm going to have to make a 20,000 shim up here for my axle, my main axle. And then I'll get all my replated studs in it. And then this box here is now ready to go back onto the tractor. I still have to sandblast this axle and the brake drum and the brake mechanism before this can go back on. I just wanted to do this on the bench. So let me do the other side now. Oh, and one more thing. Now that I have this established, I can go ahead and put the axle seal in it. Now, these seals that go here and the ones up top, which I've already discussed, and I'll go ahead and just add a little note here to this video. These are different from the 600 and 800 style utility type tractors. Like I said, I'll have to look this one back up because it's been a while since I've done that, but I'll be sure to put up this thing there at the bottom for this. Your seal here is an SKF Chicago Rawhide number 25043. And since this is now established, this preload, or in my case kind of a lack thereof, I can go ahead and install this into my seal retainer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll work on the other box. Okay, so now all the hard work's done of figuring out bearing preloads. Time to put the boxes on here. Now before this box goes on, there's an O-ring that goes right here. This O-ring from New Holland is a square cut O-ring, and whenever I priced it out, it was $55 for one of them. Of course, you need two. So I'm about to save you a bunch of money. Regular O-ring. This is a dash number 243. I actually bought some off of eBay. They actually came from Granger. They were 5 of these for 10 bucks. So it's a whole lot less than $100. So of course, you're curious, do they work? Yes, they do. They fit perfectly fine. A little bit of stick out. It'll work great for 1/10 of the price. So now that that's on, it's time to slide the box on. Alright, so there's the box on. I'm going to have to pull it up with the nuts. It looks like it's kind of wanting to hang up on me a little bit. Now, the parts manual says there's supposed to be lock nuts here. However, I don't have any that I took off, so I'm really not even going to put any of them back. And one thing, there are 2 dowel pins on these boxes. There's a solid one, and then there's one that a stud goes into that's hollow. Be sure they are there. That'll help align your axle shaft. Okay, I just looked at my service manual for my torque spec, and it actually calls in the service manual for no lock nuts here, even though the part manual shows it. So, like I say, I don't have them. They're not going back. We'll roll with it that way. The torque spec on these is 160 to 175. That's foot-pounds. So I'm going to go
pretty much 160 on mine, maybe 165. And just like everything else we torque down, go in a crisscross pattern. Okay, I'm just going to go around to double check, make sure I got all 8. Okay, so there's our box installed and torqued down. So I'm now ready to put in the main axle. And I'm going to go ahead and put some assembly lube on bearings, on the inner and outer bearings, and a little bit on the seal in here. And just to help it a little bit, I'm going to put a little bit in here on the splines. Help slick it up, maybe it'll go on a little bit easier. Then we'll slide our axle in. Wiggle it to get it to spline into the differential. And our axle is in. So now I'm going to add some oil to this bearing. Okay, and so before I put this cap on, this cap with my shims, I need to put the O-ring on it. This O-ring you can get from New Holland for $7 a piece. 216-255 is the number you want. I'm going to take and just put a little bit of oil on it to help it to slide in. We'll go ahead and set it up here along with our shims. And then we can torque those down. So like I say, the manual here calls for 60. However, all these 7/16 that I've been doing at 45 because I feel comfortable with that. So that's what I'm going to do, and that's plus what I use to set my preloads. So I'm going to torque all this down to 45. Sounds like I got me a bird in here in the chicken house with me. Alright, so for the time being, this is as far as I can go on this side. One reason is the seal that I spec'd for down here is incorrect, and I'm still going to have to go back and try to find the right one. Like I say, I have not sandblasted the axle. I also have not sandblasted any of the brake mechanism, and all that has to be on and ready to go at the same time.
Plus I got to come in here and touch up all these bolts and make these bolts nice and blue. So that's the left side done. Now I got to go do the right side. Alright, so now that I got the brakes installed, first step is going to be putting this seal in. Now, on this seal, I've kind of run into a bit of a problem on it. I don't know if it's just me or the parts themselves. These are different on the road crop from the other tractors. Now, when I tried to install this on the bench, I could not get this seal in. Ended up damaging the seal that I had. Now, the one I had was an SKF 25043, which is what I have here. And this seal basically does not want to go in. It claims that when I measure it with my caliper, this is a 3.553 inch diameter seal. My bore is a 3.548. Or you look this number up on SKF website, that's actually what it says, as the outside diameter is 548. So I had two of these. I destroyed one of them trying to install it in here. So I threw this one off to the side because I didn't think it was right. So I got on the internet and found this seal here. This one's from Steiner Tractor Parts. They're literally the only place that had this. And their number is an ABC 1562. And so when this one came in, I started to compare them side by side. And this seal actually measures 3.553. So I was like, well, what the heck? However, this seal will kind of go in. I think it might be because there's a little bit bigger chamfer on the back versus the SKF. So it kind of left me a dilemma of, okay, well, which one do I try to use? Now, I don't remember what I paid for this seal, but this seal is about $12. I destroyed one of these already, so I put one of these on the other side. So I'm kind of like, do I just go ahead and put this on here, or do I try to put the SKF in it? Because I believe this one's a little bit better quality. Now both of them fit great. They both fit the axle great. So either one will probably work. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I think I'm going to try the SKF again. And if it doesn't work, then I'll put this seal in it. And you notice this one has paint on it, this one does not. This type of seal, I would highly recommend putting RTV on it. This one, it's kind of up to you. However, since I have kind of scraped my paint off of here trying to get this seal in to begin with, I am going to go ahead and put some silicone on this one as well. If you put this on here and you try and tap it with a hammer, it's not going to go. So when I did the other side, I found a piece of 4x4 and it actually covered the seal, which I just threw in the dirt. It actually covered the seal pretty well, and that's what I used to drive the other side in, and it worked great. So that's what I'm going to do on this side. Like I say, the only difference is I'm going to try and put the SKF in there because I believe it's a little bit better quality seal. So if you do this on your tractor, just You know, you can take either seal. You know, do what's best for you, basically. Because like I said, I have no idea. I'm gonna try the SKF. It may not work. I may have to put the other one in.